Claire almost didn't answer the phone when her father's name flashed on the screen. It was 2 days before her 30th birthday, and every call from her family lately seemed to come with a request attached. A favor, a loan, an obligation dressed up as affection. But she answered anyway, because some habits of hope are hard to break. "We're taking you out for your birthday," Harold said, without so much as a hello first. "The whole family. Grandma and Grandpa are coming, your uncles, your cousins. I made a reservation at Le Chateau on 5th. Claire nearly dropped her phone. Le Chateau was the kind of restaurant she'd only ever seen photographed in magazines. White tablecloths, a wine list thicker than a novel, valet parking for cars worth more than her yearly salary. She worked the front desk at a dental office. A simple, steady job that paid her rent and not much more. "Dad, that place is... Are you sure? It's really expensive. You only turn 30 once," Harold said. "Let us spoil you a little." Claire hung up smiling for the first time in weeks. She pictured candles on a dessert plate, her grandmother's hand patting hers, her father raising a glass and saying something warm for once, something that didn't come wrapped in criticism. She told herself this was her family finally showing up the way she'd always wanted them to. She even bought a new dress for the occasion, a soft green one that cost more than she should have spent, because she wanted to look like she belonged in a place like that. If only for one night. The night of her birthday, Le Chateau glittered exactly the way she'd imagined. Chandeliers threw soft gold light across a room full of hushed conversation and the quiet clink of expensive silverware. Her grandparents were already seated when she arrived. Her grandmother in her good pearls, her grandfather in the blazer he only wore for weddings and funerals. Her uncles Frank and Desmond arrived next, loud and cheerful, followed by her cousins Nina and Theo, who immediately began arguing over the wine list, as if they did this every week. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," her grandmother said, kissing both her cheeks. "Look at you. 30, and still the prettiest one at the table." Claire beamed. For the first hour, it really did feel like a gift. Course after course arriving in gleaming procession, laughter rolling easily around the table, her father telling an old story about her as a child that made everyone howl. She let herself relax into it. Let herself believe, just for a night, that this was simply love, uncomplicated and freely given. It was somewhere around the 4th course, the lobster, the wagyu, a second, and then a third bottle of wine that Uncle Frank kept ordering with a flourish, insisting it was the good stuff, only for tonight. That a small unease began to needle at Claire's stomach. She watched her cousins order dessert without glancing at the menu prices. She watched her father wave off the waiter's suggestion of the tasting menu and order the most expensive one instead. For the birthday girl. Nobody at the table seemed to be thinking about numbers at all. Claire tried to push the feeling down. "It's my birthday," she told herself. "They invited me. This is a gift." When the meal finally wound down, the plates cleared, the candle on her dessert blown out to a chorus of an off-key "Happy Birthday." The waiter approached the table with a small leather folder. Claire assumed he would hand it to her father, the way it always happened when her father made the reservation, when her father made the call, when her father had been the one to say, "Let us spoil you." Instead, the waiter set the folder down directly in front of Claire. She looked up, confused, waiting for someone to reach for it, to laugh and say, "Just kidding, hand that here." Nobody moved. Her cousins were mid-conversation about a movie. Her uncles were finishing the last of the wine. Her grandmother was reapplying lipstick in a small mirror. "Dad?" Claire said quietly, sliding the folder toward him across the tablecloth. Harold didn't take it. He glanced at it, then at her, with an expression that was almost surprised she'd ask. "It's your birthday dinner, Claire. Of course you're taking care of it." The table didn't stop. Nobody looked up. It was as if he'd said something completely unremarkable, the way you'd mention the weather. I thought this was a gift, Claire said, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. You said you were taking me out. I made the reservation, Harold said, as if that settled the matter of who paid for anything. Someone has to cover it. You're the one having the birthday. Claire felt her face go hot. That particular humiliation of realizing, in front of everyone she loved, that she had misunderstood something so completely and so publicly. She opened the folder with hands that weren't quite steady. $9,142.60. The number blurred slightly before her eyes. She thought of the small balance in her checking account, carefully built up over 8 months of skipping takeout, of turning down weekend trips, of telling herself she was finally getting ahead. It wasn't $9,000. It wasn't close. Maybe we could split it, she asked, looking around the table, hoping someone, anyone, would offer. Her uncles, who had ordered the wine. Her cousins, who had ordered the extra desserts. Her grandparents, who could easily have covered it without noticing. Nobody spoke. Uncle Frank studied his water glass with sudden interest. Nina and Theo exchanged a glance and said nothing at all. Her grandmother patted Claire's hand gently, the way you'd comfort a child who'd skinned her knee, and said, "Oh, sweetheart, don't make a scene," as if the scene were Claire's asking, not the silence that followed it. You invited me, Claire said again, quieter now, because some part of her still expected her father's face to soften, to say, "I'm sorry. Of course we'll cover it. I was only joking." But Harold only picked up his coffee and said, "You have a card, don't you? It'll build your credit." Claire looked around the table one more time, at the family she'd spent 30 years trying to please, trying to belong to, trying to earn some unspoken approval from, and understood, in the space of that silence, something she had never let herself fully see before. This wasn't a mistake. This was how it had always worked. She had simply never been handed the bill before. She swiped her card. It came back declined, once, and she felt something in her chest crack quietly, privately, while the table around her had already moved on to discussing dessert wine. She used a second card, one she'd been saving for emergencies, and watched the entire balance of her savings, 8 months of careful discipline, disappear in a single transaction. And still, the account dipped into the negative by nearly $400. Nobody at the table noticed. Nobody asked if she was okay. Her grandfather was already talking about golf. Claire signed the receipt with a hand that didn't shake anymore, because somewhere between the second declined card and the third, the humiliation had burned itself out and left something colder and clearer behind. She looked at her family, really looked at them, maybe for the first time, and understood that love, in this family, had never been unconditional. It came with an invoice. It always had. She had simply been too eager to be loved to read the fine print. She didn't cry in the car. She didn't call anyone to vent. She drove home in the soft green dress, past midnight, 30 years old and $400 in the red. And she made a decision so small, it barely felt like one at all. The next time her father called with an invitation, she would ask, plainly, before agreeing to anything, "Who's paying?" It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger. Not really. Not anymore. It was simply the first boundary she had ever drawn with a family that had never once asked her where hers began. 3 weeks later, her father called again. A cousin's engagement dinner, another reservation, another restaurant with a wine list too long to read. Claire let the phone ring twice before answering. "Who's covering it?" she asked, before he could even finish the invitation. There was a pause on the other end, the kind of pause that told her everything she needed to know. "Well, I assumed I'm not coming," Claire said gently, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel guilty saying it. It was such a small thing, that one sentence. It didn't undo the $9,142.60, or the years before it that had quietly built the pattern. But it was the first page of a different account, one where Claire finally decided what she was and wasn't willing to owe.